Phillies fans don't want to hear this, but I truly believe the Phillies lucked out by having the Mets panic and hand Bo Bichette $42 million per season. There is no planet where Bo Bichette is worth $42 million. And I kind of brought this up in my initial Bo Bichette video where it was announced that the Phillies and Bo Bichette were going to have a team meeting. And I just didn't think the move made a ton of sense because, one, I didn't know how much he wanted. And you find out that he essentially asked for $200 million over 7 years, which was about $28.5 million per. The Mets come in and they're just like blank check. And of course, I don't blame him. He's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Opt outs, and I'm only here for 3 years. Okay, yeah, sign me up. But $28.5 million for 7 years, even that I would have been like, okay, he's probably around that number. 7 years is a lot. But what you're doing with Bo Bichette is banking on him putting it all together. Because when you look at his body of work, 2 years in a row he leads Major League Baseball in hits, but that was like 4 years ago. And 1 year he had 28 home runs, but last year he had 18. And 1 year he's stealing 25 bags, but last year he stole like 4. Now his on-base percentage is always pretty solid, barring the previous year where he was injured and it was dreadful and his batting average dipped down. I just don't know if Bo Bichette ever puts it fully together. I think there's going to be a year or two thrown in there where Bo Bichette looks like the guy that the Phillies thought that they were going to get for $28.5 million. I don't envision a world where at any point Bo Bichette, you look at him and you go, there's a $40+ million player. The Mets absolutely panicked. They thought they were getting Kyle Tucker. The Dodgers swooped in and said, hey, we're the Dodgers. We'll sign you to an astronomical number. And the Mets were like, $42 million, Bo Bichette. We need something. And they knew they needed something. Their owner's tweeting out, let me know when you see smoke. And I tweeted back, well, we do see smoke, Chief. It's the dumpster fire of your team. Because the fact is, Bo Bichette does not replace the production that Pete Alonso left when he bolted for Baltimore. And I think that might be an addition by subtraction in terms of the clubhouse dynamic, but the on-field dynamic, Bo Bichette is not replacing that. They traded Brandon Nimmo, and what they got is a reclamation project in Marcus Semien. There's a lot of questions with the New York Mets. The strength of the New York Mets, though, is their pitching rotation. Jonah Tong and McClain are two really, really, really good young pitchers. And I think that's going to be a strength of their team, but I still don't view them as a deep, serious threat to the Phillies. Whereas the Phillies signing Bo Bichette to me was like, we kind of got to do something. And that's what the Mets were. They were like, we got to do something. We got to appease our fan base. So the Phillies striking out, pardon the pun, with Bo Bichette, I actually think will end up benefiting them in the long run because I didn't think it made much sense. He had never played third base a day in his life. You were going to move Alec Bohm for the sake of moving Alec Bohm because Alec Bohm at $10 million is a really good third baseman. You're going to be hard-pressed to find many third basemen that are making $10 million that are going to give you the production of Alec Bohm. I know the fan base doesn't want to hear that because he's been the whipping boy ever since he arrived in Philadelphia because he was drafted third overall. You expect lofty expectations with the third overall pick, and what you end up getting is a guy that is a doubles machine. He drives in 30+ doubles a year. He might hit 20, maybe if he runs into a few, 25 home runs if he's lucky, home runs a year in a bandbox. But he's improved on his defense. He's a cheap option. I think the problem is the Phillies routinely bat him fifth in the lineup, and nobody looks at him and says, oh, he's a 5-hole hitter, because he's not a 5-hole hitter. But what he is a proven Major League Baseball third baseman, which Bo Bichette is not. And it's not to say that Bo Bichette couldn't transition easily to third base. There's a chance that Bo Bichette ends up being a much better defensively and offensive player than Alec Bohm. What he is not is $32 million better than Alec Bohm, which is what, when you factor in $42 million for Bo Bichette, $10 million for Alec Bohm, he's not $32 million better. Factor in also that the Phillies' top hitting prospect, Aidan Miller, is probably going to start the year in AAA and is on the cusp of making Major League Baseball. So when you look at Alec Bohm and you look at how many years of arbitration he has left, because it's pretty obvious the Phillies are not going to re-sign him to a long-term extension, they're probably going to move on. Look for the Phillies, and I said this before, for them to move Aiden Miller to third base. Whereas if you sign Bo Bichette to a 7-year deal, you've got Bo Bichette for 7 years. You've got, I think, Trey Turner with like 10 years left on his deal. And then you've got Bryson Stott, who is arbitration eligible, who I guess you'd have to move to put Aiden Miller in unless you transition him to a corner outfield spot, which I don't think they've done. The problem is the optics of today, and I'm recording this on a Friday, are just not great for the Phillies. Because the Phillies, the past couple of years, have failed to have that juice signing. Last year, their big move was Jesus Luzardo, and that was a question mark coming into the year, and it ended up being great. Like, he ended up being a really, really good pitcher for them. But at the time, nobody was jumped and excited and exuberant about Jesus Luzardo because we had grown accustomed to the big signing. We had grown accustomed to the Trey Turners, the Castellanoses, the Schwarbers, the Harpers, those kind of guys. We had grown accustomed to it. So when you trade for a guy and you bring him in and he's got some question marks, it's hard to get amped for that. And then they sprinkled in a bunch of budget signings like Max Kepler was thrown in there. Like that didn't get anybody pumped. And then you fast forward to this year's offseason and it's been much the same. And I made that video, and I'll put it up in the corner there, about have the Phillies just made a bunch of lateral moves. And I do think they have. Because the Phillies, a lot of people are looking at, they panicked, and as soon as they struck out on Bo Bichette, they re-signed JT Realmuto. I don't think the two are really equated even with the timing, because I do think that even if they had signed Bo Bichette, they would have signed JT Realmuto. I don't think there's really a world where Bo Bichette would have prohibited the Phillies from bringing back JT Realmuto. JT Realmuto and the Phillies were always destined to reunite. It was just a matter of years and money. The money, $15 million for 3 years, sign me in blood for JT Realmuto for 3 years at $15 million per. Because what he's going to give you defensively will make up for just about his entire paycheck. Offensively, I don't think he's nearly the player he once was, but that is a good contract. You're not tied in for more than 3 years. You can draft a catcher of the future if you want in the first round, in the second round, or whatever, because they don't have anything in the minors, unfortunately. But that is a good contract. You are not going to be sitting there lamenting the contract in 3 years, because in 3 years he's probably going to retire. But what I was worried about with JT was going to be like a 5-year deal. 3 years at $15 million, like absolutely. But again, it's not getting the fan base excited because you've had JT, you had Kyle Schwarber, and both those guys, I feel like for the most part, the fan base was just expecting the Phillies to bring them back no matter what, which they did, and kudos to them, I guess, for that. But there just hasn't been that signing. Maybe they're linked to Cody Bellinger, but even then, like, where does he fit in all of this? Because you've got Brandon Marsh in left field, who gives you a really good defensive left field, but Dave Dombrowski traded for that guy. He doesn't want to give him up. He's like cemented in Brandon Marsh because he doesn't want to admit defeat on that. And Brandon Marsh, to his credit, had a really good second half last year when he came back from the injury, but he's never going to be what they thought that they were getting when they traded for him. Cody Bellinger is a much better player. But when you look at the whole of their outfield, they have made a bunch of lateral moves. They did bring in Adalis Garcia, and he's not Nick Castellanos, but you could see him becoming Nick Castellanos in 1 year. Like, there's no given that he is this massive upgrade. By the way, Castellanos is still on the team. Their pitching rotation got worse because you let Ranger Suarez walk, and you still have Aaron Nola. Like, the Phillies didn't have a great day in terms of the optics, but I think in the long run they did have a good day. They locked in their catcher for 3 years. They didn't overpay for him, and they didn't give him too many years on the deal. And it still, I think, gives them a chance to win. I think Bo Bichette's a really good player. I just don't think he's worth $42 million. And even at $28 million, I would have been like, I don't really know about that. That's steep. And what he doesn't do is block Aiden Miller coming up. There is no sure thing with prospects. And I can tell you that. I follow the minor league system to, a fault. And I'm guilty of falling in love with prospects that don't pan out. But Aiden Miller looks like the real deal, and I know what does that mean? He's a 21-year-old at AA. But I would hate to sit there in a year and go, where the fuck does this guy play? And then you're scrambling, and you're like, can we put him in a corner outfield spot? This doesn't prohibit the Phillies from from moving him to third base, which I think is going to be his future. So I get why Phillies fans are mad, and I get the optics of it. Okay, your division rival ended up getting the guy that you wanted, and they vastly overpaid for it. But I'm telling you, I really think that when we look back at this, we're going to go, yeah, thank God, because Alec Bohm again is a $10 million option at third base. You're not overpaying right there, and it doesn't block Aiden Miller, and they can always move Alec Bohm if Aiden Miller's ready next year. All right, let me know what you guys think, though, in the comment section. Hit thumbs up if you like this video. Smash the thumbs down button if you thought this video sucked. Subscribing's cool. I'm good to go now.